Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'll be giving my prediction for Wilder versus Fury. So just a disclaimer before I get into my prediction, I'm not saying I have such and such boxing experience, or I'm a diehard or a boxing historian or a boxing analyst. This is really not my field of anything. So like I didn't have no lengthy boxing background and box a current champion when he was in the amateurs, beat him or none of that stuff like that. You could virtually just say I have zero boxing experience and this is really not my field, but from a casual perspective, that's where I'm coming from. I'm gonna say like seeing both of these boxers fight a couple times, really watching all their biggest wins live. Not at the fights, like on TV or wherever I watched it. I watched their biggest fights and at least seen plenty of their development. I'm not saying I watched them all in their amateur days or watched them here in the Olympics or all that stuff. But I watched a good couple years and went back and watched all that stuff. So from that perspective, that's what I'm watching. So again, I'm going from casual perspective. I'm gonna be saying what I see about the fight and then give my prediction. So to start it off, let's just I'm gonna focus on Deontay Wilder just a little bit of him. So a lot of people say, yeah, Deontay Wilder is not the best boxer. He's kind of wild. He's goofy and sloppy, but he has power. He's big and he has power. And also they say he hasn't beaten anybody. When you look at Tyson Fury, he also really hasn't beat anybody. He has the Klitschko win, he has the Chisora win, and he has the Cunningham win. So yeah, they beat other people. He's beat 27 people in total, but that's the typical in boxing or any combat sport or really sports in general. You're not gonna always fight the best people out. And when it comes to the end of your career and you're just in the legacy, it's only be about a handful of wins that's gonna stick out. You're gonna have all these other wins and maybe even those wins that people don't even know is your notable wins might be your hardest fights. It's going to be those wins over those big names that's going to stick out. And maybe the names that stood the test of time on your record that stick out. Because some wins could lose value over time. Maybe somebody was a top prospect at the time, then they never go on to do anything, but you beat them at the time, they were good. And stuff like that. But right now I just see three significant names on each person's record. So like I said, on Fury's record, he has Chisora, he has Cunningham, and he has Klitschko. Cunningham was a cruiserweight champion. He was Fury's first fight in the States, got floored by him. A guy who was basically 40 and a cruiserweight got floored by him, was getting outboxed by him, but then used his physicality to kind of wear him out over the time and then was able to chop him, pretty much put an arm across his neck and chop him on the chin with a punch. Very awkward type of finish, but he pretty much just manhandled him to a KO. But then a couple fights later, he fought Chisora, his rival. I think he beat Chisora twice, but I'm saying, you can't say Chisora's two people. He beat him twice, but he's still one person. But beat Chisora, and Chisora might not be a big win at the end of 20 years from down the line. He might not be a big name. He might be a good at least he was a good test. But as far as legacy, it's not like he's winning any real world titles or anything. So he might not be a big win in a couple years. But Klitschko, obviously you can't deny Klitschko, one of the greatest heavyweight fighters of all time, greatest heavyweight champions of all time. So that's a win that's going to stand the test of time regardless. That's going to stand the test of hundreds of years. That's going to stand eternity. As long as there is history to be seen, it's going to be there. So that Klitschko win, it stands out. Then on Deontay Wilder, let's go Deontay Wilder. He beat Stiverne, he beat Ortiz, and who was the other person he beat? Let me see. I'm forgetting. It was Ortiz. Oh, Arreola. Arreola's a pretty decent name. He was a several-time title challenge. So beating Arreola is a solid win. Beating Ortiz is a solid win. And beating Stiverne is a solid win. Stiverne was the world champion at the time. He beat Stiverne and got that world title. Arreola, several-time challenger. He was a top American heavyweight for many years. So Wilder beat him was significant. Then Ortiz might not have no world titles, but he was supposed to be seen as this boogeyman, had all that good amateur experience. He beat him, knocked him out. So 3 good wins on each person's record. Obviously, Fury had the best win between the two, but that's about it. Then you look at their recent past fights. Fury's been inactive. He's been getting drunk. He's been getting fat. Then he's been able to get back in shape, and he had 2 fights this year. But really, the competition very meager. It was just build-up type of fight, tune-up fights. 2 tune-up fights over really not significant fights, whereas Wilder's fought a former champion, destroyed him in the first round. Then he fought Luis Ortiz. Great back-and-forth fight. Was able to stop him. Was able to show heart. Was able to show skill and stuff. And show improvements that people kind of overlook in that fight. Was able to get that win. But aside from their backstory, you kind of get a gist. They're both solid fighters. Don't try to belittle Deontay Wilder's wins because they both really only got 3 good wins. Maybe Deontay Wilder has way more fights, or what's it called, 27 versus 40, about 13 more fights than Fury. Couple 3 years older than Fury, I believe. So it's both pretty much have the same amount of good wins. Fury just has the better win. And over the past 2 fights, Wilder has the best 2 wins, the better track record, because Fury's last 2 wins were over, I would say, tune-ups. Like you could say tuna cans, tune-ups. Well, I don't know. I'm messing up, but tuna cans, people that he was supposed to beat and supposed to beat easily, and he did. But now to the actual style matchup between the two. I think it's gonna be a first for both. Maybe not exact first, but it's gonna be something different from what they're used to. You both fighting two very mobile, kind of herky jerky, a little bit not the most. Even though their styles are orthodox, they are very unorthodox how they do things. You got a 6'7" Deontay Wilder, who was not like he was born and bred to be a boxer. He has power. He's long, lanky. He has power. You got Tyson Fury. He might not be he might not be able to move like the Matrix, like a Lomachenko or any other little mobile people, but he has very good footwork. So he's like a tall man. He has tall man footwork. He can move. He understands his range. He knows how to use it. So, and he's very mobile. Like he could be mobile, but it's not like he'd be bouncing around the ring and flying and stuff. But he can move and make these subtle movements to make himself even longer. So he's very awkward and he knows how to do what he has to do. And he's very slick. And he's like 6'8". So he's 1 inch taller than Wilder. He's still pretty young, especially for heavyweight, being 30. And he's skilled. So you got two people that are very different. So as far as like, now let's kind of see, that's basically getting about style. You got two people that are very different and very fresh for each other. It's like you don't really see that many 6 foot people that are tall anyway in general. Then as boxers, then with the skills they have, and then with the cardio and pace they can push. But then again, it's not that high. But whatever case, let me go back to Deontay Wilder a bit. So Deontay Wilder, people see him as more so a power puncher. And he is. But he has a jab. It may not be the best jab, but it's definitely very effective. Especially when you're 6'7" and got long arms, that jab is gonna be effective. You just know how to use it. He knows how to use it, and he does use it. Then that straight is deadly. He has power, and the thing about his power, people might just say, "Oh, maybe Wilder could either win early or Fury wins the decision." But Wilder can win at any point in the fight. It's not like he's a muscle-bound heavyweight. He's like 6'7", and he weighs about 220 or less. I think guys between like 210 and 220. So that's why he has power throughout. It's not like a power that he has to load up. He has power. It's his natural power. Like it's not a power he has to lift a whole bunch of weights or train it too much to have. It just comes natural. So he can knock you at any point, and he has. When he seen a lot of his toughest opponents, he's knocked them out in the later rounds, not the earlier rounds. So he has power anytime. That would make him scary. He's like deceptively explosive. He's very athletic. He's very wired. He's very instinctive. But he also thinks more than people realize. And he has power, like I said, power that comes at any time. And at a heavyweight, most heavyweights gonna get slow. Like they're not the most cardio people. So like they don't have the most cardio like of all the other weight class. They kind of have the less cardio. So they had to kind of fight a different style, and they start to kind of labor towards that mid part. Then that's that mid part where he has that other switch, because he's not a big heavyweight. He can just land that big punch at any second. And when they start to slow and they things start to that reflex start to diminish, then he can turn it up. That's where how he's beating a lot of these other heavyweights. So people might say, oh, he just sucked. And all of a sudden, he always has that little point in the fight where he just turns it up, and then other people can't keep up with him. He catches them, and he just like storms on them. They just get drowned. They get knocked out. So that's something to know about Wilder. He can finish the fight at any time, so that's definitely dangerous, especially with somebody so long. He's not a short fighter, so he basically can touch you at any time, and all it takes is like one punch for him to change it. So that's scary. Then you got Fury. He definitely has that technical aspect. He has that jab. But looking at his best win over Klitschko, he fought Klitschko, who at the time had gotten used to. Oh, that's stuttering. But yeah, at the time got used to being, I guess, the taller fighter, the bigger fighter, or at least just the more physically imposing fighter, either fighting people around his height or shorter than him, and pretty much going to that clinch in 1-2. He was clinching in 1-2 and everybody. That's what Klitschko would go to. People try to get in, he would just clinch them. Then on the break, he 1-2, he clinched, he 1-2, clinch 1-2. It was just like textbook. He would keep doing that all the time. Nobody had any answer for it. He had that big power. He had a big physical, like he was big and physical, and he could just impose on you. But against Fury, who had footwork, young, and had a good like technical boxing, he couldn't do that with him. So it was like he was out of. It was something different from me. He had no answer for it. Not much happened in the fight, but Fury was just not his typical opponent, and then he can impose his normal style on him. So that's something to note. But against like Wilder's, you can't really even really game plan for Wilder, because he doesn't really play by the rules. He's kind of like he's unorthodox. He boxes at times, but he also has that explosion and that herky jerky, and he makes it a fight. So I think in that fight, that's what's really gonna be important. I think as far as between the two, it will be a boxing match. But I think what Wilder has in his tank or whatever, in his book bag and his toolbox, is that ability to feel when the fight needs something different. He can change it on a dime. But you really haven't seen that from Fury, except against what's that one fight? That Cunningham fight. because he turned that on. Well, he didn't really turn anything on. He just manhandled him, but he realized that he just needed to get him out of there, and he put his size on him because he was getting outboxed. And that was against pretty much a middle-aged cruiserweight. So you haven't really seen him do that against anybody else because most people haven't had to deal, like, at least his best win wasn't used to him. He just could stay in his toolbox. His wheelhouse. He didn't have to change anything up. And I think that's what's really will lead Wilder to be able to win this fight, is because he has that ability to adapt. He's had harder fights because it's not like he's the most technical fighter. It's not like he had the most years. He wasn't bred to do this. So he's evolving and getting better at every fight because it's still, I guess, he's still developing. He's like, his whole career has been in the developmental stage because not like he had that amateur, like real lengthy amateur background where he became himself. He's still finding out who he is as a boxer, and that's scary. He's getting more technical. Even that Luis Ortiz fight, if he didn't like had those little subtle, or not even subtle, but those improvements he had going like in that fight, and fought like he fought before, he probably got knocked out by Luis Ortiz. But you saw his head movement improve. You saw his setups improve. He was more aware of what Ortiz does, and he's an adaptive fighter. Like, as I say, he got those instincts. He trains, and he's smarter than people think. It might not be the most technical, but he knows what he's doing with his style. I think that's really what's going to play out. I think Fury's certainly going to be able to do his like jab, his movement. That definitely will like frustrate Wilder. But it's not like Fury puts on like such a high paced style that maybe he could potentially drown Wilder. It's not like he does too many body shots that he could wear on Wilder. It's not like he gets on it. And plus, Wilder, even though he might not be the biggest guy, he might not be able to bench press so much or nothing, he has that, like that natural strength. Like, he's just strong. He's wiry, but he's strong. He's not gonna be somebody that's gonna get muscled around by Fury. So it's not gonna be Fury's not gonna be necessarily be able to pose on him like he would need to beat him, or at least take away his mentally beat him. Like, Wilder's always gonna be mentally tough. It's not like Fury necessarily has the necessary tools and stuff in his toolkit to, or at least he won't be able to implement them in the way he needs to implement them to break Wilder down, in my opinion. So I think it's probably going to be Fury early, in my opinion, as far as winning the rounds, whereas Wilder's going to be trying to find himself. Fury's going to have his jab on early. He'll be trying to set him up with stuff. Wilder might come close with a couple of these big shots, might buzz Fury up a bit, but it's going to be Fury leading with his technical. But I think now towards the, once it hits that sixth round, I think that's when Wilder's going to be able to turn it up. He's going to start to be able to find what Fury is doing, be able to find Fury with his punches. Then that's when it's going to be kind of the wear down effect. Those power punches are going to be hurting Fury. Those power punches are going to throw off, that when you get hit, they say it's like your IQ kind of drop. Somebody might be this when they get hit, but everybody got a game plan until they get hit. And especially when you get hit by Wilder, then it's going to start to dip. His sense is going to start to dip for the ring. His game planning, all that technique going to start to diminish, and it's going to turn into a fight. Just like when all things, they said, it might be a boxing match for the first go round, but in the end, when it comes down to who wins, it's not about the technique starts to go out the window in those championship rounds. It might still be there, but it's the person who has the more heart, who wants it more, who needs it more. And Fury is a fighter, but I think Wilder's going to have that power. It's not like Fury's a power puncher. It's going to be two people fighting with heart, two people who want it. And Wilder I think, Fury said he wants it so bad. I think Wilder's going to want it more. I think Wilder's going to be able to find that punches, find that big shot, and he's going to be able to just make it the type of Wilder fight. He's going to have to rally. He's going to have to grit it out. He's going to have to find that shot, and he's going to work him. And again, he could probably get like a 8th round KO over Fury. I mean, this wasn't the best analysis. This wasn't the best thing, but I think that's pretty accurate in my opinion. I think the fight could play. I think it's going to be Fury early. Wilder's going to find that, Wilder has that second gear I mentioned. And then once he finds that gear, I think Fury's not going to have this gear because Fury hasn't had to really develop that gear with his style because he's always like either leading or he's either jabbing my way or keeps my distance. He's not really been necessarily, as far as in his, later in his recent year, hasn't really been in a dog fight per se. Whereas Wilder's, given that he's not a technical, he always has to kind of power through. He always has to turn that gear on, and he has that athleticism. Fury's not really an athlete per se. He's big, he's mobile, but he's not really an athlete. He don't really have that athletic thing. He's just smooth. But whatever the case is, I got Wilder late, and I got Wilder via 8th round KO. And that concludes my fight prediction for Wilder versus Fury. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and come back for more videos. Peace.